last panel of the day. You've been very well behaved. I'm very impressed. So on this panel, Tomar and Dave and myself are going to go over, some of the best practices and some of the stuff we've talked about throughout the. I'm just looking for my name card so I can go sit down. Throughout the conference, but I think it's good to kind of go over some of the themes, and we'll kind of modify what's already been, what we haven't talked about before, and reinforce other topics.
I'm sure everyone knows who you are.
Yeah, I'll just put it right there. Exactly. Okay. So would you want, okay, you have the clicker, Tomar, right there?
I have it?
Yeah, right there. If since you're going to be driving the bus today, and Dave and I are just kind of eye candy, you know what I mean? That's why we're up here. But the first topic, right, we're going to get into really, right, the agenda and kind of walk through what we're going to go to. And I think the first thing we're going to talk about, Tomar and Dave, right, is really the why is this so important?
Right. Why is this not working?
Here, try the which one? Let's see if I can do it here. It's yeah, okay, then I'll drive. So right, we'll go right into why is this so important? Like, why do you care about this? You know?
Okay, so
talk to the microphone if you don't mind.
Yes, sorry.
Yep.
Sorry, my notes and everything. So before we actually go into looking what the issues are and what are the best operations, what I really want to do is to take a minute to discuss like the settings and the background of withholding agent, where we operate in an environment and the pressures that apply to us. And, some of the pressures and the risk of these regulatory requirements, some of them being the obvious one, like, like the regulatory requirements. But when we look at tax authorities, for example, tax authorities always want more data. It's been discussed about in many of these sessions how they want more data. In some of the cases around, especially around the AI session, they did talk about how they're getting sometimes more data than they know what to do with. So we know that the IRS is investing in technology. We have IRS, and we have they are improving the reporting process, but also, as we discussed in several of these sessions, the IRS are implementing AI tools to analyze the data and identify discrepancies. The commissioner of the IRS already specifically noted that AI is a cost-efficient, highly effective tool to compensate for years of underinvestment, meaning they can move faster. They can get faster to close those gaps through AI. They also announced that they are using AI to select who to audit. They specifically mentioned large partnerships, and they also having an AI pilot to select earned income tax credit recipients for audit. But they haven't fully given us a lot of data about how they're going to be using, what data they're going to be taking, but we know that they're going to be using it. Also, from an audit perspective, we were talking a lot about this. There was a session here. I think every year when I come here, one of the things that I hear is that audits are on the rise, right? Like, and all these new programs of audits. But, we heard in Hot Topics that now it's not just IRS audits. We have FATCA and CRS from foreign tax authorities. We have GINs being revoked, right? So this is the environment that we're working on, but one of the things that also important to remember is that we also have accounts payables, and we don't tend to talk about accounts payables here too much. An accounts payable is a whole Is there anyone here from accounts payable? I just want to know.
Well, actually, does anyone support accounts payable, right? That's part of the.
Okay, so I'm glad you're here because probably not enough people talk about
Yeah. And if you want
this
a panel on accounts payable, maybe an extra put in the forum. Sorry to interrupt, but I mean, because sometimes people debate, should we have it on the conference or not? But yeah, go on, because it's so important.
It is so important, and it tends to be a lot of time underlooked.
Totally.
And one of the things about accounts payable is there are no accounts, right? It's not like brokerage or financial services where you have a lot of accounts, and you can put rules around those accounts. A lot of time, all the sourcing, all of the tax rules, all of that needs to happen live and sometimes manually. There's little automation that happens there, and as in the audit session, as Effie said, he actually gave an example. I had it as a point, and he actually gave it as an example of someone that he has right now of a financial institution where they're doing audit, and they say, hey, give us your accounts payable. So even though we have accounts payable people here, account payable touches each and every one of you because all of your ducks need to be in a row, right? Everything is important, and accounts payable is something that cannot be overlooked. Now, from a business environment, it's not just that the tax authority move forward, it's also, again, we talked about technology advancing. Well, your competitors are advancing too. They can do more, they are becoming better, and clients are expecting you to become better. They're expecting your online services to be better, they expect you to be able to do everything in a timely manner, not make mistakes, and those pressures keep increasing. So as far as a reporting organization, basically this makes the reporting organization invest more in the technology, better infrastructure, better systems, and software, and really important, a lot of them, we can see a lot more investment in data management, staging, data pools, right? Because the reporting keeps changing. The idea is to move from defensive compliance to preparing for the unknown. Do you want to add anything?
Yeah, I mean, not just why is this important, like why is this hard, right? Because it's complicated, it's complex, it's ever changing. We have the tax operations group, like we're going to talk about process versus tax technical, which some of the other was, it has to take areas where there's a lot of gray area, where it's not, it was easy when I was wearing a hat of, thought it was easier when wearing a hat of tax advisor, because it's like, well, it could be this, it could be that, but as tax operations, you need to make something at scale. You can't debate it week in, week out, and years. So that's part of why it's hard. And some of the most diligent organizations observed, right? They're constantly improving. Their efficiency in delivery and their compliance, which sometimes can be contradictory, right? You want to be efficient in delivering the stuff, but you also need to be compliant. And just to add to the accounts payable, a number of years ago had a client at the time, and we were doing a global tax operations review. And it was one of the larger financial institutions, and we looked at everywhere around the country, everywhere around the world, like it was about 100 plus jurisdictions, but in the U.S. specifically, we reviewed their tax operations per different business lines and units, and the regional management we're working with was trying to get the vendor payments, the accounts payable group involved during our process, and they just didn't engage. And then sure enough, right when we ended, the IRS came in, and there was a very extensive review that went on, and their biggest exposure was the vendor payments, because everywhere else they weren't getting it right everywhere, but the IRS saw they were trying. In the vendor payment side, they just didn't have the basics in place, and their exposure in their vendor payables, accounts payable was more than the rest of the bank combined. So that's just to reiterate your point earlier.
Yeah, and the only thing I would add too, as we go through this, I kind of think about often how I have to get more money for projects and technology and for spend. Some of these slides might be good for when you make your internal case like, why you need to do something, why you need extra money, to sit there and say like, well, I got the tax authorities, the complex business environment, and how I have to put everything together. So, these slides can not just be useful for here, but also for in some point, some internal point you have to go through and say, hey, I need more money for automation, need more money for AI, and here's why. So we're going to go through the next one, I think, right? We're going to go talk about workflow, which is the hardest to a lot of this, like, getting the best practice, why you need a good workflow to get a good result at the end of the day. So, Dave, you're going to start with us on that one. Yeah. Right.
So high-level workflow. So, really, it's like taking those tax technical rules, like they talked about in the last session, and applying that at scale. So it's really, how do you operationalize what's can be very vague, could be very not precise, and apply it to, what could be every transaction that's done in the bank. And I always thought, the rules, it was just, it's really where, it's really where you you can't say yes or no or maybe. You need to just make it and go and be able to operationalize it and put a frame. So this is a framework in place to help make that process go. So, it's looking at documentation, upfront, when accounts open, then at transaction time, you have your payments, and then, you have your annual reporting. So you have to do when accounts opened up, at every transaction, and then annually report to the IRS. And then there's, so walking through the workflow, it's the documentation, you have your KYC onboarding, tax onboarding, you collect the tax documents. So it's really moving data from process to process and having the tools, technologies, and processes to move it along the way. So once, the person's documented, then you have to, you flag those data elements that then have to move to the payment system, that when are, are they U.S. or non-U.S., individual or entity, are there treaty benefits and exemptions? Then there's the payment itself, and you need the data around that payment, right? What's the source of the income? What's the type of payment, type of income it is, and does is there applicable withholding rates? And then once, if there is withholding, remit to the IRS. And then at the annually, right, you have to take all that data from the transactional data. You have to manage that data by remediate, harmonizing it, aggregate everything, and then identifying what's reportable, what's non-reportable, and then implementing that with doing your annual reporting and just working things through the process. Anything like to add?
Yeah, I mean, the workflow kind of pretty much speaks for itself. I just say that one thing that's different between these columns is if you look at the payment systems, that's the only one that needs to happen basically real time. Because once you paid the money, you can't have it back. So you're liable for any mistakes you make. So that's where automation is important, or subject matter expertise to make sure that you're not making the mistakes. Data management you can fix along the way. Reporting, you have time, you can ask for extension. Payment systems is the more sensitive part.
Yeah, no, and I like this slide too, because it helps me organize like the different silos that we have to worry about in our day-to-day. And as we've talked about all the different things that we have to worry about, if something's wrong in a particular silo here, it impacts the downstream. And so it's really the whole reason we have this best practices, this slide, is to sit there and think how, do I have the right documentation, do I have the right payment system, data management, annual reporting? Because if something's broken along the line, it could be very problematic.
It takes complicated tax rules and makes it an assembly line process.
Exactly.
Moving it all the way through to produce it.
Exactly. Okay. So this would lead nicely to challenges, right? That's why we're all here, and we all have a lot of operational challenges. And, when we think about what's our best practices here, and Tom, are you going to lead us on this one?
Yeah, I'll start with this one.
Yeah.
What I can promise you is I'm not going to read everything from this slide right now. It's definitely written for you to take home. Also, we had 3 operational session in this
Yeah.
in this conference. So some of the things that you write that are written there were already said. I have no intention of repeating it. I am going to take a little bit of a different angle. I am going to talk about the challenges, but I'm going to talk about some things that are not on the slide. But bear with me. So basically, what I'm going to say, like, okay, let's start with documentation, right? How many people here are there anyone here that is not using software in order to document their tax forms?
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Okay, that's great, because everyone here probably understand how complicated the validation of tax form is, the maintenance of tax form are, getting new ones when needed. So I'm not going to go into all of this because, again, it was discussed in previous session, but I'm just going to say what you haven't done during onboarding, you're going to pay for later. And one of those things that we don't talk about is get consent for paperless contact, right? We don't think about it as a part of documentation, but if you don't do it during onboarding, go find the client later. So if you're for example, in a very technical field, you know, like one of the gig economy clients, if you're Robinhood that do a lot of online banking or something like that, then you interact with your client online all the time. You can have prompt there. But if you're, for example, an insurance company, sometimes you don't know who's there, right? Like they don't have a lot of contact, and it ends up every communication that you do with the client on paper costs you $1 to $2. So the sooner you get it, the better. Let's talk about payment system. Okay, so determine the taxability of an event, classifying it. There's not much room for error. Withholding needs to happen about real time. We talked about that. And then again, treaties. Treaties are signed with respective jurisdictions. And they may have their own rules, their own withholding rates. Some treaties provide an exemption regardless of the payee residence or citizenship, and while others provide exemptions according to the payer status. Some of these were mentioned here. Also, there are constant changes. Belarus, Russia, Hungary, out. Chile, in. New. Taiwan, in, but it's not really a treaty, so it's codified. So, right, like, there are constantly changes. You constantly have to monitor them. And if that's not digitized, it's going to be very difficult. Data management. I'm going to mix data management and reporting together. So, again, several tax form changes here, including 1042S. We have 3 new income codes, 2 new status codes, and we've got to keep track of all these. 1099K, oh my God, every year I talk about 1099K. And 1099K is like the story of the Schrödinger cat. The threshold is 600 and 5,000 at the same time. And some of them are ready for this and some of them are ready for that, and all of a sudden at the end of the year they emerge as one or the other. Now we have 5,000, probably going to go down, but you have to be prepared to make changes, and sometimes at the last minute. One thing that we haven't spoken really about, and from an operational perspective that I do want to mention, is the move from FIRE to IRIS. Okay? Okay. How many people in this room filed this year their new original filings to FIRE? The old system. Okay, so we have several, right?
Several. For the people virtually, it's several. Raise your hand.
And the reason I'm saying this is because last month, on the IRS system update call, it was reported that the IRS has no plans to retire FIRE system earlier than 2027 for tax year 26. However, on May 1st, that's what, 5 days ago, in a public IRS call, a rep from the FIRE system advised the filers that are still using FIRE that they should prepare for the transition. They alerted act sooner rather than later. They said that you should get the IRS TCC now, you don't have to wait later for the year, and the IRS speaker reported that it's not yet been determined what will be the retirement date of FIRE. However, it has not yet been determined whether all the forms which FIRE accepted for tax year 24 would also remain on FIRE for tax year 25. So there is a possibility that you're filing next year that you have to do IRS with, and you don't even know that they haven't announced it yet. You don't want to be caught unprepared. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the difference between FIRE and IRS, how I see them, especially from a reporting perspective. FIRE, the legacy system, we file an ASCII file. IRS, it's an XML file up to 100 megabytes. Now, as of this year reporting, 1042S was added to IRS. So now IRS has all the forms, and in the next year, it's also going to have an extra form, the 1099-DA. 1099-DA is exclusive to IRS. It's not going to be on FIRE. So as that move will require you to do some amount of coding or to rely on a vendor that would do it for you, but you need to build the functionality and ability to go there. If I have to summarize the biggest difference between FIRE and IRS, it's the validations. And the validations on IRS are significantly more strict than those of FIRE. Just clients that have filed year after year in FIRE all of a sudden find a lot more rejection. I had a client that was filing 1099-C. That's not a big form, 8 boxes, right? But they didn't have a description in box 4. The whole file was rejected, right? And they had to go back and start finding a description for each one of them. They don't accept letters in the city name. All of these kind of things, which FIRE may have been more lenient in the past about. So you just, you have to take into consideration that things that worked in the past may not work when you move to IRS. In addition, 1042S, the IRS has shut down the data integrity tool. So instead of incorporating, what they've done is we had this integrity tool and it gave us all of this. They took all of this and moved it to the validation. So they still have the integrity tool, but now it just rejects your file. So you have to be prepared for that. One more thing, corrections have to be submitted in the original filing system. This is all good, but that means that for a while you're going to be having to use both systems. And if you are moving system of filings, let's say you're moving from between vendors or you're moving from a vendor to in-house, moving within FIRE was relatively easy. You could just took the file and you could file a correction or what have you. But moving because it's an XML in IRS, you're going to need to collect a lot more information from where you're leaving. You're going to need the UT ID, you're going to need the receipt ID, you need the unique sequence number. All of that didn't exist in IRS just because it's an XML. So you've got to be prepared for these things. One other big difference there is that FIRE, the files were flat files. I could stuff a lot of forms. Everyone solved it a little bit differently. I can tell you that from our experience, we can shove about 1 million records per FIRE form. For IRS, it's 100 megabytes. So if you're filing and adding CFS state reporting, it's about 30,000 records that would fit for us. Sure, again, the numbers could be different but the difference is significant. So if you're filing 2 million forms with 30,000 per file, you're going to have a lot more file to reconcile and to track, especially for changes. One more thing that I said, because I talk too much, but I want to give the other two chance to talk. But when we talk about the process challenges, people before me talked about all of the different regulations that could affect you. One regulation that do also affect us and that we don't think about it is accessibility. It's not even information reporting, but we're all giving 1099 PDFs to our client, right? That's something that we also have to comply, and jurisdiction after jurisdiction are it's coming in, right? It started with Canada, California is coming next month in June, right? Like accessibility, if you have to make sure that your PDFs are compliant, otherwise you could be in trouble. Do you guys have anything else?
No, the only thing I was going to say is just, the panel I was on when we started the conference, we talked about different observations we had in the reporting season. I was on the panel earlier with Chris and Jamila, and, it's kind of I joked it was our therapy session. You could see that some of the problems that come up, you could go back to documentation issue, payment issue, data management issue, and as a result, you had bad reporting. So all this kind of dovetails, like if you don't have a good foundation, it ends up to be bad at the very end. So do you want to move on to how we can handle it? So right, now we said, okay, you got all these challenges, we're feeling really sad, but now my friend David's going to make us feel better because say, how do I handle these challenges? It's through therapy, medication, alcohol, but there's other things we can do as well. What are you going to talk?
You knew me so well, Dave.
Yeah, exactly.
So, right, there's no shortage of challenges. That was like a random listing, but a good way, as Dave said, a good way to like start thinking about where the challenges are. No shortage. We could have filled this whole slide just with the challenges alone. But so how to handle challenges. So, I mean, generally, when I think of things, I break it down to like people, process, technology, and data. And most challenges seem to, fit into one of those. It's a data issue, it's a process issue, it's a technology issue, and a people issue. And, here, again, I'm not going to read through every one of these, but it's kind of breaking it out to, data collection and data maintenance. And, that's around the data, and the payment systems are more around the process, and the reporting's around the process. Under reporting, just wanted to highlight, the first one there, create plans and track progress. I always used to work with someone that said, fail to plan, plan to fail. And I actually looked that up today, and that was actually, it's attributed to Ben Franklin, so we're in DC.
Okay.
I think that's
Nice.
applicable.
Good.
Maybe that's
So
on a
good.
wall somewhere in the city. But, it really it's not just reporting, it's creating plans for all of this. Try to be as transparent in the process as possible. I mean, one of the main issues I've seen in places I've worked and people I've consulted with is key man dependency, right? It's not maturing the process. It's just having a few people that know it and they just get it done. And we had a client last year that came to us it was in November, and they said something like, are we supposed to do, I think we've done this in the past, but the people who did it, they left. But aren't we supposed to do something, isn't there something around 1042S's, 1042? And we're like, yeah, and they were due a while ago. But we'll help you get those done and implement it.
You should have told them not for this year. Oh, this year? No, this is, yeah.
Exactly. That goes to the VCP that, I mean, that we're talking about. Just really how to mature an organization to go from, just a couple people knowing to do this to make it repeatable processes that no matter who's there, it continues. And again, it's, developing processes, it's avoiding that key man dependency by documenting what's there, policies and procedures. That's actually the next slide. But, that's just one of the main things you see that the challenge that many organizations work with is not how to make this just beyond it's the tax people, the tax guys do it. We could hire anyone. We've got policies and procedures, we've got technology, we've got training, and we could do this every year and do it efficiently and get a little better every year doing it. Is there anything you want to add to that for this slide?
A few things, not too much. I did say collect consent forms on as early as possible, which I still stand by it. And always tin match. It's amazing to me how many people don't tin match until the end of the year, and then it's like, oh, we have a problem, right? You can tin match, and during onboarding, you can tin match during the year. You can do it several times, and it's free, and it could save you a lot of problems. So definitely tin match. Also, data management. Again, this is not always up to you. It's sometimes up to the organization. But the better that your data, the more organized you are, the smoother any change is for you. If it's a move from between systems, one of the things that I'm remembering from last year's conference, Tara Ferris sat here on the stage, and she was talking about the move to Iris, and she said now that Iris has a better reporting system and they have better technology, it is likely that they would want to do something with the whole 1099 system, which is a very archaic system, right? So we may be looking in the future at an overhaul of the 1099 reporting or the 1099 forms. Like there could be a bigger reform happening. Now, companies with better data are going to survive this or going to have to invest less. The better your data is, the less stages you have to go through, and the easier the path is. So have clients with data lakes or staging that helps significantly. If you go through staging, you limit the amount of data that you have to map. You apply logic, and then you flag the data to be reviewed and remediated later. And as far as reporting goes, always file for extension, even if you plan to file in time. It's automatic. You just have to file, and you get more time. There's no reason not to file for extension, because if there's an issue, then you can always, because why not? You can file with 8809, online on fire, or and if you need to file to furnish for late furnishing of the statements, it's form 15397 that can be submitted, but that's not automatic filing. And another one recommendation that I have is reconciling your data. Don't wait until the end of the year. There's no reason not to start reconciling the data soon, especially when we're talking about 1099Bs or some of the transactions that turn into a tax form. You can start reconciling data. Whatever you can take to the beginning of the year, do it, because you have NEC, you have 30 days from the end of the year to do. That's it for mine.
Yeah, and just to add that, right, goes back to that process slide is, just the workflow slide. Like there's technology that you could put in place to help each step of the way, and then best practices are connecting those technologies or using a platform that connects the data. So then the data moves from section to section, and then, right, like you said, tin matching is a simple thing that could be done. And I know certainly people that have, the large producers of 1042Ss, you want to start, right, come the late summer, early fall, start bringing your data together for the year. So it's not an exercise after the year closed to see if you have everything, test everything. It's particularly for the larger producers, but for anyone, just start bringing your data in towards the end of the year. You don't have to wait, and then you just do the incremental last couple months, and it just makes it a lot easier. And it's perhaps everyone's always busy, but it makes the busiest time not as busy.
Well, before we move, one more point, one last point. If you're a small filer, right, and that's another thing, another difference between Fire and Iris. Fire now has capability of filing directly on there, right? Like you can do the file on, you can put the information either on the screen, or you can send an Excel with a template and up to 100 records, and you can do it up to 10 times, so up to 1,000 files, 1,000 tax forms that you can do directly there, and they can do the PDFs and whatever is needed to be done. That is a consideration if you don't have a lot of forms. Consider doing it directly to, filing directly to Iris. It could be easier. unless you choose a managed service. But if you're going to file directly, then that could be an option. Also, the IRS came and said that limitation to 100 forms per Excel, per submission, per template, they are considering extending it to 250. So that means that the limit would go from 1,000 to 2,500 forms. That's a consideration to have.
Okay. No, the only thing I was going to add on this is that I was thinking about more like on the reporting end, like why, when you try, again, get my theme of like, how can I get money internally, right? Well, because if I don't get good money to get good payment system or data maintenance, screw up my reporting, it comes not only penalties or reputational, just looks bad, right? You don't have your act together, makes your organization look like you don't know what you're doing. And so in the past, the way I've done that internally is just to emphasize these data collection, data maintenance, payment in order to justify why we need that, so we have good reporting. People who don't know tax can understand good reporting because everyone gets a 1099, right? And so, but they might get lost in the weeds when you're talking about payments or data collection. But if you emphasize the outcome, you might be able to get the money to either get good people, good training, good payment systems, automation, and so forth, for in terms of our workflow chain. So now we're going to go to, we touched on some of this, but why don't we talk about like our best practices for the policies, procedures, and the training?
Yeah, so this is continuing along the last slide, which was more looking at the data and the technology. This is more looking from the people and the process side. But just a few things I wanted to highlight. Certainly, transparency is the more people that are involved and aware, developing KPIs, key performance indicators, have some metrics that you're looking for, benchmarking against prior years, really trying to control process instead of rushing to get it done. But, the second point, utilize subject matter experts. That's both from the tax technical as well as the operation side. So there's certainly, from the tax technical side, traditionally there's internal resources, external resources. I've had the privilege to work with some people very accomplished in this area. And one thing that it's always given me some comfort was to see the people that I looked at that are like, oh, they know everything, but to see how much they don't know. And they're very willing to admit it. Like, no one knows all this stuff. Even the other day when Subin said something and everyone in this room was like, oh, wow, you could U.S. filers could do that? No, nobody knew that, right? So, certainly look to utilize subject matter experts, both internally, externally. I know as a best practice, one thing I've tried to implement a number of places is, validate approaches and processes and positions. So it's, come to what, we think is the right position and then validate that against, maybe an external advisor. Just to make sure to keep, that they're in agreement, as well as have it documented that we're going this way and they agreed, and that goes a long way with the IRS. I've seen that. But like I said, so that's from the tax technical side, but also from the operation side. There's providers out there that offer outsourcing or supplemental resources, or could even help, guide you through the process. Certainly work with some people that, just from operational aspects, I have weekly calls to just hold their hand through the process and help them, and they come with questions, right? So, but they're not, it's just a little bit of time invested, but from them, but it really goes a long way to making the goal of, being more compliant and more efficient. So there's a number of things, so it's utilizing people. And then, just another thing, like it was mentioned the other day, transcripts. We've certain clients that get them monthly because they make a lot of payments. Certain places that get them annually to make sure. And then places, I'd recommend anyone just do a baseline. When we say transcripts, you can get them in a day. You just can call the IRS call, and they'll give them to you. That's your 1042 transcripts. And they also, there's so many stories of, you just call to see, and it just, and it's payments aren't applied to the right years. People think they have a credit balance, but that's sitting they made a payment in '25, they thought it was for '23, and it's in the wrong year, so then, they're getting penalties and interest. There's civil penalties. I have one client that just working with now, they have a civil penalty from 2015 that they didn't even know they had, that's still there, that they're trying to get resolved. And this is all determined by calling the IRS, getting a transcript. It's by year, so you'd want to get a range of years. It's not cumulative, so you could owe money one year and have a credit balance in another year. So then it's just, you call the IRS and have them the funds from one year to the other. But it's a way to say, we think what we did and we know what we did, but it's how is that interpreted and how is that being recorded by the IRS, and that doesn't always match up, and very many times it doesn't. So at least as a baseline, I'd recommend everyone get their 1042 transcripts for a certain range period, just to see, and I'd get civil penalty transcripts as well if you have some other penalties, because there's a lot of times the address they're sending them to doesn't make it to the tax department and people that could handle it, so there's not even knowledge they're even out there.
I'm good.
Well, before we move to the last slide, which is on AI, the one comment I want to make is on subject matter experts, because there was a time I used to think of myself as a subject matter expert, but now I know too much, I don't know anything. But anyway, it's how do you utilize, I would think, that person. Like there's a lot of I think my department, we have some of the smartest tax people out there, but their knowledge would be irrelevant if they're not telling the right people and seeing things done and making sure that they can communicate the technical regulations in an operational fashion, right? So you can have really smart people, and so we have to make sure that we have people who can communicate to make sure stuff gets done, or communicate to clients, because there's plenty of smart tax people out there, but they're good to only talk to other tax people. So it's really, how do they utilize, can I go make sure it gets done? And then even then too, because even if you bank up your reporting, again, that makes it irrelevant. So if we bank up a client's report, I can't sit there and say, yeah, operations banged up, but boy, we got these smart people over here. It's, they're like, okay, that's irrelevant. You banged up my 1099, my 1042. So again, it's also make sure you have the right people, but make sure the right people are telling other people who need to know how's that good being done, and making sure that they are able to communicate the right business requirements to move stuff forward. So our last topic.
Last topic, not last slide.
No, last topic though, right?
Yep.
Yeah, last topic, that's what I'm saying. Last topic, what would be a tax panel without talking about AI, right? And so, right, Tomer, you're going to kick us off on that.
Yeah, okay, so again,
And we have about
we're not
10
the
minutes.
first. We're not the first one to be talking about AI. I will take it a little more operationally than the other session, so we wouldn't overlap. But again, AI has made it in a storm into our life, right? In just a handful of years, it's integrated into our life and transformed everyday activity. And I'm going to say this: if you are not using AI in your personal or work life on a daily basis or on a regular basis, you're probably behind in one way or
Should we
another.
shame people? Should we ask people who's using AI?
Yeah, I'm going to
Who
prove
is
it.
it? Who's not using AI?
No.
That's during drinks later.
Yeah, but because AI, as was said many times in the session about the technology, it is a tool. This is my third year talking on an operational conference here in this conference. The first year, I didn't want to tell you that I used AI to help me prepare my stuff, because it felt like, ooh, people saw AI as a way to cheat, or I didn't want to mention it. Last year, I wanted to show you how important of a tool it is. I mentioned that AI was used to create this. This year, I feel that if I don't tell you that I used AI, then I'm doing something wrong, because it is a tool. And AI is not coming to, I wrote there on the side, right? AI is not going to replace you. This is a quote from the entrepreneur. AI is not going to replace you, but an AI-equipped professional will. And they also write here, AI won't replace you, but a professional who master multiple specialized AI agents will operate on an entirely different playing field, transforming from overwhelmed generalist into strategic powerhouse with superhuman productivity. And the thing is that AI that we had 3 years ago and the AI today is different significantly. And I put a table just so you'll see, right, the capabilities. And the AI capabilities are growing at an enormous pace, near exponential pace. ChatGPT was used with 117 million parameters. The next version, 1.5 billion. After that, 175 billion. After that, 1.76 trillion. And the next one is going to be 3 to 5 trillion parameters. So it multiplies its abilities almost on an annual basis, and it's becoming better and more accurate, and it knows more. It is now dominant in almost every part of your life. It can help you with content drafting. It can help you with spelling. It can help you with search tools, with chatbots, with AI power research, and also up to all the way advanced analytics, and people are building like compliance platforms. Let's go to the next slide.
Sure.
So what I wanted is to list a few of the types of AI. This is not an exhaustive list, but I wanted to really go down to how each type can help you and give you tools that can help you in your tax reporting.
We got about 5 minutes left.
Sorry?
5 minutes left.
5 minutes.
Just so you know.
Yeah. So the first one is natural language processing. Basically, it's an intelligent system. It can understand, it can interpret, and it can generate human language. This is the type of ChatGPT and Claude and Gemini. You can use it for several things. It doesn't have to be tax specific, but it can definitely, it can be a person. I can tell you that a lot of organizations, every organization out there, every desk out there is utilizing AI in one way or another. Most of us start with the natural language processing, either personal assistant or AI-powered search bars or help buttons or help chatbots that can help you, all the way up to tax research platforms. Currently, if you look at ChatGPT or Gemini or these, you can look at them today as the friend from the cubicle next to you that you can ask anything, and they would always give you an answer. They would know almost everything, but they could sometimes be wrong. Sometimes they don't really know the answer, so they make it up. So you really have to check.
Like the guy next to you.
You can't rely on what it says, but you can really ask for it for anything. And I can tell you that the prompt that I gave ChatGPT just to go in this is like, I am going on I'm going to be a panelist on a conference for tax information reporting. And the name of the session is this. I want to talk about the challenges and the best practices. Can you suggest what I talk about? You can be very, very specific, and it gives you great answers. Not all of them. If you don't know what you're talking about, then you'll be in trouble if you use everything. But it gives you good ideas, a good structure that you can start working from and save you a lot of time. Machine learning, learn patterns and make decisions or predictions from without being explicitly programmed. So basically taking the trees and turning it into a forest, so you can see the whole things. Offer actionable insights and trends to improve your compliance, detect anomalies in your data, perform transaction analysis, monitor and analyze your workflow. You can even take non-standard forms like K1 or self-certification, can read them, identify what's in there, and take the data and then utilize it somewhere else. RPA, robotic process automation, this is just taking and automating your everyday activity, the annoying things like reconciling tax data, enhancing and reconciling your process, detecting invalid or missing data, extract data from your documents, or utilize it. It can build dashboards for you that are specific to what you're doing, and also map your data downstream without you having to manually do it. And the last one is the smartest one. It's two kinds that I mix together, expert systems and cognitive computing. They basically emulate human thought process. It's the ability to think like an expert and process complex situation. These would be assistant that would help you, for example, validating tax form and suggesting classifications, or identifying transaction type, or sourcing issues, or how to treat and give you options. I think it should be one of these two or one of these three. Identify applicable treaties and assist with calculating the withholding, or recommend the correct income code on the 1042 or other code. Do you guys have anything to add?
Yeah. So,
1 minute.
one
Pressure.
minute, so what I have to say is so important, it's worth hanging around for. No, but just say, I remember right before COVID, because it was in the office, that's how I remember, there was an automation group for the company, and they were going to, they were saying, okay, we're going to work with the tax group to see where we can use technology more and people less. And, we went through step by step everything we did, and it was the best they could come up with was like, okay, we could go scrape some websites for some tax security master data, if you programmed it to say, hey, this is what we're looking for. Let's say, this is the type of transaction, and this should be handled. And, in the effort to implement was definitely more than the people we had doing it and everything. So fast forward 5 years, the ability now, like you walk through and the things have been mentioned, to read and interpret data is just so much, couldn't even imagine that 5 years ago that you could do that. And, and it's only going to get exponentially smarter. So, things that were mentioned earlier, like the ability to take like a withholding statement and break that up into, unstructured data and make it structured. It's just, a lot of things that struggle with today, organizations struggle with today, how to handle IMYs and apply that. All that can be automated, and there's technologies that do that. So it's just part of the ever-changing theme that we have, looking at all this stuff. It's constantly changing, and this is definitely one of the main driving points.
Thank you, guys. So I'm going to walk over here. Okay.